It started with one body, a scared, vulnerable runaway, snatched out of the rain-drenched night. Then came another, and another. The first were found discarded in the Green River, like trash, their bodies held down with rocks. Then there were more, many more. In King County, a new, darker force was making itself known. He preyed on the desperate, the vulnerable, the young. He showed no mercy, and he was good at it, one after another vanishing into the night. Then, a man stepped forward, out of the shadows. It was a crack in time, an era of rising conservatism under President Reagan, a time of economic boom and social neglect, a time when a glut of serial killers stalked America's highways, casting a long shadow of fear over a nation that felt increasingly vulnerable. In the heart of this fear, in King County, Washington, a beast was lurking. Police were operating in a void, a gap between old methods and future technologies. Computer databases and advanced cross-checking were still in their infancy. There was no widespread CCTV, no cell phones for tracking or communication, and no concept of DNA analysis to link a suspect to a crime scene. It was a perfect storm for a predator, a moment in history where a meticulous and cunning killer could operate with near total impunity. He was a perfect fit for a world that simply wasn't equipped to find him. The shocking discovery of 5 bodies in and near the Green River in the summer of 1982 sent a chilling signal to law enforcement. A serial killer was on the loose, preying on a population that society had, for the most part, chosen to ignore. In a desperate attempt to catch the murderer, the King County Sheriff's Office formed the Green River Task Force. It was a monumental operation, bringing together detectives from multiple agencies in a frantic, unyielding search. Their headquarters became a chaotic hub of activity, filled with the hum of teletypes and the pressure of a community in terror. The victims were mostly young women, many in their teens, with a history of prostitution on Pacific Highway South, an area infamous for sex work. The killer chose his victims deliberately, targeting those he knew would go unnoticed. Many were runaways with fractured family ties, and their disappearances were often not reported for weeks or months. This created a critical window of opportunity for the killer. He was hunting the missing, women whose absence would likely go unnoticed or be dismissed by a society that had already chosen to look away. The crime scenes themselves offered frustratingly little. The bodies were left in remote wooded areas, often found unclothed and in an advanced state of decomposition. The cause of death was almost always strangulation, a brutal and intimate method that suggested a deep-seated rage. But without modern forensic tools, investigators were working in the dark. There were no clear footprints, no tire tracks, and DNA analysis, a tool that would later define the case, was still in its infancy. The killer was a phantom, and the only proof of his existence was a growing list of victims. By the end of 1982, 8 bodies had been found, but this was just the beginning of a crime spree of a scale the world had never seen before. Amid the chaos, a name surfaced that would become crucial to the investigation. In April of 1983, a young prostitute named Marie Malvar disappeared from Pacific Highway South, the very same hunting ground used by the killer. Marie's boyfriend had last seen her get into a dark-colored pickup truck with a single male driver at a bus stop. He followed the truck for a short distance before losing it. Just a few days later, he spotted a truck he believed was the same one, parked outside a house in Des Moines. He reported the address to the police, and that house belonged to a seemingly ordinary man named Gary Ridgway. At the time, Gary Ridgway was a painter at the Kenworth Motor Truck Company, a mild-mannered blue-collar worker with a family and a perfect attendance record. He seemed like an ordinary person, and that was his greatest weapon. Detectives from the Des Moines Police Department went to Ridgway's home and saw his maroon 1975 Dodge pickup in the driveway. Ridgway was, as he would be throughout the investigation, remarkably cooperative. He admitted he had been arrested for picking up prostitutes in the past, but denied any involvement in Marie's disappearance. He even claimed to be unemployed, a lie, as he was actually on strike from his job. The boyfriend's description was too general to be conclusive, and with no other evidence to connect Ridgway to the crime, the case stalled. But for the detectives, a deeper, unspoken feeling lingered. They were talking to a body, a man with a calm, polite exterior, but they sensed a terrifyingly warped character beneath the surface. He wasn't concerned because he lacked the basic human compassion for the girls he was killing. He was a seething beast, writhing beneath an everyman exterior. It was a fleeting, gut instinct that would haunt them for years to come. The man who would become America's most prolific serial killer had just dodged his first bullet. Marie Malvar's body would remain undiscovered for 20 years. Throughout 1983 and 1984, the bodies kept appearing. The Green River, Star Lake Road, and a vacant lot south of SeaTac Airport, each location became a tragic cluster of victims. The task force was racing against a killer who moved with a chilling efficiency. They discovered that most of the bodies were unclothed, a detail that suggested a trophy collection or a ritualistic act. The cause of death was almost always strangulation, a violent and personal method that hinted at a deep-seated rage. Ridgway would later describe his method in chilling detail. He would tell his victims that he could only have an orgasm while entering them from behind. As they were on their knees, he would wait for them to raise their head, and that's when he would attack, wrapping his arm around their neck and choking them. He would sometimes use a different ruse, telling them a car was coming to get them to lift their heads so he could get a clear shot at their neck without their hands getting in the way. He called his method personal and rewarding. When a victim fought back, he would simply lie, telling them he would let them go if they stopped struggling. They would stop, and he would keep choking until they were dead. To him, a woman stopping her struggle was just a way of lying to her to keep her from fighting. But their primary investigative tools were fingerprints and witness interviews, and the killer was smart enough to avoid leaving either. He chose dump sites where evidence would be washed away by the rain and concealed by the wilderness. As investigators would later discover, he was a meticulous planner. He would cut the fingernails of his victims to avoid leaving behind skin or blood. He would even replace the tires on his truck after a kill, tossing the old ones in the river to prevent them from being matched to a crime scene. Ridgway was not a monster lurking in the shadows. He was a painter at the Kenworth truck plant, a family man with a perfect attendance record. He was, in his own words, an ordinary person. This unassuming facade was his greatest weapon, and it allowed him to operate in plain sight, blending in with the blue-collar landscape of King County. He even cultivated a reputation as a good date with prostitutes he didn't kill, believing these women would later serve as an alibi if he was ever questioned by police. His sense of ownership and his need to retain possession of these bodies drove him to pin his third river victim beneath the surface of the Green River. It was an ordeal to hold the body at the bottom and cover it with large rocks. But he did so because you had already found two of them by then, and I wasn't going to let this other one get away. He resented having to dispose of his victims after killing them, calling it a burden and a waste of my time and gas. He would spend hours before and after work patrolling the areas of prostitution. He called his urge to kill a career and said he was good in one thing, and that's killing prostitutes. When asked why he killed so many women, he couldn't provide a clear answer, simply stating, "I don't know if it was an illness or I just wanted to kill." He admitted his admissions were motivated by a pride in his criminal accomplishments, often bragging about hiding bodies that the task force never found. He believed he was a victim of new technology, not of an investigator catching him. Amid the long list of victims, there was one woman who survived. Her story, which came to light 2 years after her attack, was a watershed moment in the investigation. Her name was Rebecca Gard-Gay. In November 1982, Rebecca was hitchhiking on Pacific Highway South when a man in a truck offered her a ride. When she asked if he was the Green River Killer, he laughed and showed her his ID from the Kenworth Trucking Company. He seemed like a normal, non-threatening man. He drove her to a secluded area for a sexual encounter. But as Rebecca performed oral sex, his demeanor suddenly changed. He became enraged, accusing her of biting him. He attacked her, pushing her face into the dirt and wrapping his arm around her neck in a police-type chokehold. Rebecca, terrified, pleaded for her life, telling him she had a family. The man, however, seemed to click. His face went cold, and she was certain he intended to kill her. After a brief, violent struggle, she managed to break free and escape to a nearby trailer for help. Rebecca's detailed description of her attacker, a white male in his early 30s, a maroon pickup truck with a white canopy, matched Gary Ridgway. She also remembered the Kenworth ID. When shown a photographic montage in 1984, she immediately identified Ridgway as the man who attacked her. This was a direct, confirmed link. But when confronted by police in 1985, Ridgway admitted only to dating Rebecca. He maintained he choked her only as a reflexive reaction to her biting his penis. With no other evidence, and Rebecca unwilling to pursue the case, Ridgway was not charged. It would be years before Ridgway confessed in 2003 that he did, in fact, try to kill her. Despite the lack of an arrest in the Rebecca Gard case, Ridgway remained a person of interest. He was known for his strange habits, like practicing walking noiselessly in the woods to creep up on his second wife and frighten her, and once putting her in a police-style chokehold. In 1984, he willingly submitted to a polygraph examination. Polygraph tests are designed to measure a person's physiological response to stress, which is often an indicator of deception. But Ridgway was not like other criminals. He was a psychopath, able to remain calm and unemotional, even while discussing his monstrous acts. When asked if he had killed any of the Green River victims, Ridgway calmly said no. The machine showed no deception. He passed. As he would later admit, he was completely unperturbed by the test, simply relaxing and answering the questions as they came. This arrogance, this belief that he could fool anyone, was rooted in his sense of superiority. He believed he was a master of his craft, and that investigators were simply not precise enough to catch him. He was right, for nearly 2 more decades. In 1987, still convinced they were close, the task force served a search warrant on Ridgway's home, work locker, and vehicles. They seized hundreds of items, including carpet fibers, paint samples, ropes, and a crucial saliva sample. But with the forensic science of the era, none of it could be definitively linked to a victim or a crime scene. In his own mind, Ridgway's success was a point of pride, using gloves, not bragging about it, not talking about it. He would strip his victims of their clothes and jewelry, calling their clothes just rags to me. He would then leave their jewelry in the women's bathrooms at the Kenworth plant where he worked. He got a thrill thinking about women at work wearing the jewelry he had taken, saying, and my favorite thing was, maybe if someone's walking around with a piece of that jewelry that they found in the bathroom. He confessed that he even left a victim's driver's license at the airport to make it seem like she had left town. Frustrated by the lack of progress and with no new leads, funding for the Green River Task Force dwindled. By 1992, the grand operation had been scaled back to a single detective, Tom Jensen. The case, for all intents and purposes, was officially cold. Ridgway, meanwhile, continued to live an unremarkable life. He married his 3rd wife and moved from Des Moines to Auburn, but he never stopped hunting. He continued to drive past the very sites where he left his victims, feeling a sense of ownership over his property. The city of Seattle, believing the killer had stopped in 1984, began to heal. But the monster was still out there, and he was just getting started. The case of the Green River Killer was far from over. It was simply waiting. Next on Cold Blood Crime, a new era of forensic science and the incredible DNA breakthrough that finally unmasks the killer. Be safe and see you in the next one.